Hey, what's going on, everybody? It is Tuesday, October 3rd. So we had a big down day in the market today. I wasn't really anticipating this, but a lot of stuff I want to talk about in this video today, so pay attention. First of all, the big news, which I'm going to get to, not right away, but I will get to it, is that House Speaker Kevin McCarthy has been ousted. And that has some potential implications for the economy, for stocks, maybe negative implications, and I'll talk about that in a minute. Today's sell-off, it looked to me, well, there might have been some concerns about McCarthy and his ability to retain the speakership even before that vote came. That may have added some jitters because obviously without a speaker, now the House cannot really advance any new bills or any new business. They need a permanent speaker. I don't know if there's anyone in particular right now who would be considered a front runner. And McCarthy himself might try again to get reelected as speaker, but I don't think he has the votes. Anyway, let's set that aside for a moment. Most of the selling today was once again on interest rate fears. And that is that's been the monetarist reflexive reaction. I mean, we've seen this now for over a year. Last year in October, I gave you almost the exact date when I said that the Fed's rate hikes, we were going to hit an inflection point where the negative impact or the bearish impact from the rate hikes was going to diminish, and the positive impact from increased interest income transfers was going to start to take over. That was in October 2022. I gave you almost the exact date, and that was the bottom. And, we've had 7 rate hikes in fiscal year 2023, which just ended on Friday, by the way. Yeah, we also got the first data for fiscal year 2024. I'll talk about that in a second. But we've had these reflexive headline selling, and what amuses me is that I literally saw headlines today saying the market is plunging or has plunged. Folks, we're down 1.3% today. I was a trader in 1987. And I lived through the crash of 87 when the market went down 22% in a single day. Okay, so you're not going to get me all, running for the hills because it's down 1.3%. And I get a kick out of the headlines when they say the market is plunging on a 1.3% down day. I literally personally experienced a 22%. That would be almost like 7,000 Dow points. It would be like 900 S&P points. So you could see the hysteria. You could see that, this generation of investors, people now, they just, no perspective. But it's also a function of the fact that the media always has to, they got to get eyeballs. They got to get people reading their articles or watching their shows, and fear is a big motivator, so it's always kind of framed in that perspective. Now, some of you here, you say, well, Mike, you said this was going to happen last Tuesday, and Wednesday it didn't happen. Like, if you're here for that, I think you're in the wrong place. As much as I try to give guidance on short-term moves based on the flows, I really always reinforce the idea that you have to have the macro picture in your head, and it's really about that macro picture and the long term. I try to offer guidance on, shorter term stuff, and most of the time it works out. But there are going to be times like today where, a headline pops up or something happens, like the 10-year went to 4.8%, and we know that, with the exception of the stuff I talk about and people here on this channel, myself, they're my friends again, those yappy dogs. Maybe it's my voice, I don't know. We know that, it's 100% the monetarist view. And we know what triggers their behavior. And we know that their behavior is wrong because, for a bunch of reasons. Number one, it's emotional. Number two, most important, I think, is that they really don't even understand monetary policy. Like I always say, they see it as a single variable reality, when in fact it's not a single variable. When rates go up, there are winners and there are losers. When rates go down, there are winners and there are losers. Same thing with inflation, same thing with taxation, all this kind of stuff. So they're living in a world which is not the correct understanding of reality, basically. But their behavior is driven by their understanding, and also they are, like I said, that's the 100% of people. Really, like, what I do, I wouldn't even call it the 1%. It's fractional. You might as well just say, like, it's a very, very tiny group. What's out there in the financial media, in the mainstream economics world, on Wall Street, it's 100% monetarism. And again, they really don't even have a grasp of monetarism in the sense of how it impacts the economy or sectors of the economy. Anyway, so if you're coming here and you're saying, Mike, you said that was going to happen on Tuesday and the other thing happened on, that's just, you're in the wrong place. I'm trying to keep you guys focused on the macro picture. It's kind of like saying, let's say I was a time traveler and I went back and to before the Grand Canyon was even formed. I don't know, how old is the Grand Canyon? I think like 18, 20 million years old or something like that. And you're standing in that region where the Colorado River was flowing, and you're telling somebody, 18 million years from now, there's going to be this gigantic canyon carved through this landscape, and the other person's saying, like, are you kidding me? It's just a river flowing. In fact, sometimes I even see the dirt filling back up into the river. Then you go away and you come back. I'm a time traveler, and now you come to today. It's one of the great geological wonders of the world, how this river over time. Same thing with macro and all this stuff that I talk about. That's why I was able to say last year, there's not going to be a recession in 2023. Stocks were going to go up, which they did. Day to day, anything can happen. You can have an event pop up. And I guess that's a good segue. I ought to talk about McCarthy. I had no particular love for McCarthy. The thing that gets me is that the group that ousted him, the group of Republicans, and by the way, all Democrats voted against him as well, but the group was led by Matt Gaetz from Florida and his compatriots. What bothers me about this whole thing is not necessarily that McCarthy lost his job, but Gaetz is a big time, and all the people who follow him, he's a big time deficit and fiscal hawk. Okay? Constantly talking about, government is spending too much and how we're going to pay this back. And, just this, his whole understanding is mired in this misinformation and lack of understanding and just sheer ignorance about how the monetary system functions. And how, sovereign money and, absolutely no clue about MMT and stuff like that. To him, they've got this massive debt. It has to be paid off, all this bullshit, that we hear all the time. Now this is potentially bad news. Right now it's not, because we don't have a speaker and no new spending bills are going to happen, because we got this continuing resolution which will take us into November. But after that, there could be a problem. We're looking at possibly a significant swing to a much more, or I should say, a hawkish fiscal environment. And if that comes to pass, that's not just a short-term top. That's like a serious top, and well, let me just put it this way, a serious contraction in the U.S. economy. I mean, these people are talking about cutting entitlements, they're talking about cutting, basically cutting everything. Maybe not defense, but so that's out there as a potentiality. That is out there, and it's something that, the politics now are going to become very important to watch. I mean, again, not in the next 45 days necessarily, because nothing's going to change, but you got to watch it now to see who's going to go in there as speaker, what the rhetoric is in terms of what their fiscal outlook is going to be. And right now, I don't like what I'm hearing. So that's something really we got to pay attention to. Now, the first numbers of the fiscal year came out, the daily treasury statement. Yesterday there was a 14.7, I think, billion drain. That could explain some of today's down move. However, there was also a Social Security payment today, so we could say that maybe the down move would have been worse if it were not for that Social Security payment. And I also think, just to repeat myself, that I think this anxiety over what's going on in Congress with the House of Representatives and McCarthy, I think that was hanging over the market as well. 1.3% down is not a plunge. Okay, that was a headline on Drudge. That is not a plunge, folks. Again, I lived through a 22% in one day. For those of you, too young to remember that or whatever, do the math. 22% of where's the Dow now? 33,000 or something. Where's the S&P? 4,300. You're talking about 900 points down in one day on the S&P. That's the equivalent of what that would be if that happened today. So it doesn't, something like this, it just, I don't even really pay attention to it. I didn't expect it, but I don't really pay it. It doesn't shake me up whatsoever. Now, what I will be following, aside from the politics, which I just mentioned, and is something that I talked about yesterday. I want to see these daily flows now, in particular, because, we're right back into this situation of student loan payments having to be made after that moratorium of the last, 3 years. And I want to see how that's going to affect mainly, the deficit. In other words, the deficit of the government equates to the net addition to the financial balances of the non-government, of us, right? If the government runs a deficit of 1.7 trillion, by definition, that means 1.7 trillion was added to the financial balances of the non-government globally, in dollars. So I said yesterday, and I've been saying in my videos, if we start to see that shrink materially, not just a little bit, but if we really start to see that shrink, that is an indication that these student loan payments are having a negative effect. But one day is not enough data. Okay, we need to see more data. And by the way, yesterday's flows were about 7 billion below the flows of the first day of fiscal year 2023. All right, so we compare first day fiscal year 2024 to first day fiscal year 2023. It was down 6.8 billion. But again, you can't go by one day of data. You have to see how this plays out. You have to see what kind of a trend develops from this, whether it's, positive in terms of increasing flows or negative in terms of contracting flows. So not a whole lot to do right now. We got to, keep our eyes open, watch what's going on the political front. We know, or I told you guys months ago, that coming into September, October, We're going to have a down period because we have two tax drains. We had the tax drain on September 15th, which we recovered all that. Now we got the tax drain coming up on October 15th. Okay, I said this all in advance. But I said that the overarching picture was bullish. But now with this development in the House, I'm not so sure. We have to see. But it's not a good sign that the Matt Gaetz's group in the House, who are all diehard fiscal conservatives, who don't understand how the monetary system functions and thinks like, you know, we have this massive debt and we got to cut spending. I mean, that's just a bad political, or potentially very bad political environment right now. Nothing has happened yet. There hasn't been no new, spending authorizations or budgets, but it's something we have to be aware of. Okay? Anyway, that's it for today, folks. Don't forget, go to my website, pitbulleconomics.com, if you want to follow along with the how these flows are developing. I think you should get my course on understanding the daily treasury statement. It's $99. You'll be able to work through these numbers. The daily treasury statement is a free resource put out every day at 4 p.m. Eastern Time by the Treasury Department. It's literally like looking at the checkbook of the United States government, and it's the most leading indicator, the most leading resource. All these economists on Wall Street, they're looking at government numbers that are put out every 30 days, every quarter, every year. They're so behind. They're trying to extrapolate out from these things, and basically they're just looking in their rearview mirror. As I've said so many times, these flows, that's the first derivative. That's the core of the analysis. You have to understand that. And it's not hard. I mean, if you look at these numbers and you know what to look at and how to, record the data, it's very simple. It's just simple addition and subtraction. You'll be way ahead of the game. So go to my website, pitbulleconomics.com, and get your video course. See you tomorrow. Bye.